If you've traveled internationally, you've likely seen a duty-free store in the terminal or even seen people receiving their duty-free purchases at the gate before boarding their flight. Though the concept of duty-free can be confusing and unclear for many travelers, especially when deciding whether it's a good deal. Hey, how's it going everyone? It's Ernest from TripAstute. In this video, we're going to review how duty-free shopping works, whether it's worth doing, and some tips to keep in mind when shopping at these stores. I'm embarrassed to admit that I didn't really understand how duty-free shops work until I started researching the topic for this video. I've seen them many times and I've even made a few small purchases in the past, though it's always been a bit confusing to me, so I thought others might also have questions about the stores. So in this video, I'm hoping to share what I've learned about duty-free shopping and also share tips and considerations when using the service. But first, if you're new here, welcome to our channel. TripAstute is a travel channel that is focused on sharing ways to make travel easier, affordable, and more enjoyable. Traveling can be stressful and expensive, so we're looking for ways to help you maximize your experience through travel tips, points of miles, and innovative gear. If that sounds interesting to you, please consider subscribing. Duty-free stores are essentially stores that allow you to avoid paying local taxes and fees at your destination. So if you were to purchase a bottle of wine in Spain at a local wine store in Barcelona, you would likely pay some form of tax or duty on the item. Buying it at a duty-free store means that you're not getting charged the extra taxes on that item. Though you might still have to pay taxes when you arrive in the US, though we'll discuss that later in this video. The prices at duty-free stores can vary quite a bit as well. The pricing is meant to reflect the local rates, but it doesn't always mean that you're getting the best deal. In general, liquor, tobacco products, and luxury items are probably the best items to buy at a duty-free store. That's because cigarettes and alcohol tend to have the highest taxes. Luxury goods can also be a good deal too, especially if it's an item that isn't normally discounted at home. On the other hand, electronics and fragrances are usually not the best items to purchase duty-free, since you can usually find them at lower prices online or even back home at stores like Costco, even if you're having to pay taxes on it. Depending on the item that you purchase, you may be able to leave the store with it, or it may be handed to you when you are boarding your flight. This is generally to make sure that you are actually leaving the country and not just trying to buy something to consume during your trip. Though this aspect of duty-free always confused me, and I think it would stress me out if for some reason my item wasn't delivered to me in time. Now, what about the restrictions? This is where it gets confusing. Every country has rules and regulations on what you can bring in without a tax or penalty. For example, in the US, you're allowed an $800 duty-free personal exemption every month. This means that you can bring up to $800 worth of goods without having to pay for taxes. However, there are additional restrictions on alcohol and tobacco products. For example, you're only allowed 1 liter of duty-free alcohol and a maximum of either 200 cigarettes or 100 cigars from most foreign countries. So for example, if you were to bring back 2 liters of liquor from your trip to Spain, then you would only pay for 1 of the liters since the other would be exempt under the rule. The 1 liter that is subject to the customs duty would be charged a 3% duty on the price of the item. Keep in mind that your state may have additional restrictions or fees on imported items. There are also rules around the amount of time that you need to be outside the country. For example, if you're a US citizen, you must be outside of the country for at least 48 hours before you can bring back any goods from a duty-free store. In some cases, like traveling to Canada, US citizens are allowed to bring back fewer goods if they've been outside the country for less than 48 hours. But you'll want to examine the rules, especially if you have a short trip. Also, most personnel at duty-free stores should be able to advise you if you have any questions. Lastly, there are additional rules on what you can ship back without incurring duty fees. You'll want to examine the official rules if you plan to ship back any goods from your destination. I'll include a link to the US Customs and Border Patrol website, which outlines all the current regulations. As always, I also want to share some tips if you're planning to do some duty-free shopping. Number 1, avoid certain food products. Most countries are concerned about agricultural diseases and pests. As a result, you could have your duty-free purchases confiscated if customs thinks that it could be a threat. In general, the following items are safe. This includes vacuum-packed cheeses, dried herbs and spices, canned fruits or vegetables, baked goods, candy, chocolates, oil, vinegar, mustard, and honey. Jams and spreads are usually okay too. However, with anything that could be interpreted as a liquid, you want to make sure you're not transporting above the liquid limit. There are exceptions for some purchases from duty-free shops, but you're often at the discretion of a customs official. Number 2, be aware of alcohol transport rules. This is one rule that seems to get a lot of folks in trouble. If you're bringing back alcohol into the US, you want to be careful of how it's transported. For example, if you're flying back to Los Angeles from Barcelona, but stopping over in New York, you'll likely need to place your purchased alcohol into your checked-in bag at your layover. This is because you're not allowed to transport alcohol in your carry-on bag. You'll likely pick up the checked-in luggage, then drop them off again for the domestic leg of your flight. I saw someone have to give up several bottles of expensive wine because she didn't realize that she couldn't take the bottles in her carry-on bag. By the time she was informed, her check-in bag was already dropped off. You definitely don't want to make that mistake. If you don't have a non-stop flight back, you want to make sure to transfer your alcohol to your checked-in luggage or just check in your carry-on bag. If you're wondering how to transport wine or beer safely in your luggage, check out our video on the topic. Also, it probably goes without saying, but make sure you are of legal age when trying to bring alcohol into the US. Even though you can buy alcohol without the same age restrictions in other countries, it doesn't mean that you can bring it in if you're not 21 or older. Number 3, be wary of duty-free price comparison sites. When I was researching this topic, I came across a few duty-free price comparison search sites. I thought the concept was great, especially the site Duty Free Addict, which shows you the prices across various duty-free stores and the variance in price. The only catch is that the information is outdated. I noticed that most of the items have not been updated in several years, so it's probably not accurate. This seemed to be the case with most of the sites, so just be careful when using them. Number 4, combined duty exemptions. If you're traveling as a household, you can combine your individual $800 exemptions as a joint declaration. This includes children and infants too. So in theory, a family of 2 adults and 2 children could have up to $3,200 of duty-free exemptions. Number 5, don't plan on reselling your duty-free items. Purchasing items duty-free is for personal use only. Planning or declaring that you're going to resell the items could get you in trouble. While I appreciate those of you with entrepreneurial drives, this isn't a situation where you want to try to make money off your purchases. Number 6, don't leave items on the plane. This one is obvious, but the reason that I'm including it is that I've actually done it. When I flew back from Paris a few years ago, I purchased some expensive chocolates at the duty-free store for my family, but after the long flight and in the rush of getting off the plane, I accidentally left the bag in the overhead bin. I didn't even realize my mistake until I was leaving the airport. While I'm sure the flight crew was happy to find the chocolates, I wasn't too happy to have left such a pricey purchase on the plane. Since getting off the plane can be a hectic process, make sure you place your goods in your carry-on bag or by your feet. That way you're less likely to leave it on the plane. Have you all shopped at a duty-free store when traveling? What has been your experience? Please let me know in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video or found it useful, please give us a thumbs up and consider sharing the video with others. It really helps us growing our channel and community. Until next time, travel safe and travel smart.